quick second. Thank you. That JB was not able to join us for this meeting. She's actually got a teaching conflict with this, kind of a standing teaching conflict with this time through December, is my understanding. And but we can potentially just set up a separate meeting with her at a different time. We have to resolve a contract issue, I guess. But after that's resolved, we can maybe set up a separate meeting just to meet with JB and go over the ordinance stuff. But maybe we can queue up what we want to discuss with JB, so we're being very efficient with her time when we're ready to do that. But that's one of the agenda items, a modified agenda item, if you will. So that's why we're doing a kind of a quicker Zoom meeting today, and the weather's not great as well. Looks like Emily joined us.
Hi, sorry,
Emily?
I was having some internet issues.
That's all right. So Tori is our official host. And maybe if I can just ask Tori to if you could please put up the agenda, Tori. Okay. So I might just suggest putting the third bullet, the regular committee update to the select board, and the septic ordinance discussion as maybe as one bullet, because there's several questions that the committee will have for the select board about how we proceed with the ordinance. So that might be a good opportunity to update the select board, and kind of we're at this decision crossroads with some questions that we have, and we can get into that on the agenda. So we have to approve our last meeting's minutes. We have an update from Peter. Amy not joining us, Peter? Okay.
Sorry, I was on mute and couldn't find the spot. Yeah, that's correct. Amy, we kind of looked at the agenda and what we were discussing, and I'm just going to cover it tonight.
Okay, no problem. Then we'll get maybe just an update from Tori and Linda on grant funding, stacking discussion, and then we can get into that update to the select board and the septic ordinance discussion. And anything else that people would like to talk about tonight, the other agenda item section? Nope. Oh, there's Bruce. Hey, Bruce.
I,
Bruce, we were just saying we have a shorter agenda item. We're not going to dive in too deeply on the septic ordinance tonight. JB was not able to join us. We're going to have a separate non-wastewater regular time meeting with JB. She has a teaching conflict at this time through December, so we might have to meet at a different time to meet with JB. But
thanks.
we're going to cover at least what we still need JB's help on, and some questions regarding some select board decisions that will need to happen, and how this committee might present that to the select board.
Great.
Okay. Tori, uh, this is why I asked if you could host it. Would you mind putting up the minutes from last meeting?
Mhm.
Thank you. Everybody have a chance to look at that, or maybe we could do a slow scroll if you have not, to see if we need any changes and if we're going to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of September 17th, 2024.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that. It's Bruce.
Any discussion? No discussion? Any all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Thank you, Tori. Okay, Peter, would you mind giving us an update? Tori, would you mind, I'm sorry, would you mind putting the agenda up again? Just so we can, some points that we thought maybe Peter might be addressing in the update.
Yeah, I'll dive right in.
So we have Peter, just before you jump in, just kind of the latest on survey design, the landowner contacts / permissions update, and any permitting updates, updated timeline, next steps, with any that and anything else you might have would be appreciated.
Sure. Well, we have a lot going on right now. We're making a lot of progress, which is great. This Thursday, a bunch of DEC folks and Stone folks, and I guess anyone here who might be interested are welcome to join. We will be doing a passive seismic evaluation up at the school. Essentially, I think it's UVM, but I could be wrong. Emily or Ashwa could jump in. Essentially, we're going to have a free use of equipment that will allow us to try to determine bedrock around the school site and down towards the river. We're hoping to use that data to then better inform kind of our hydrogeologic models and estimating in terms of groundwater flow and groundwater direction and where we think
Yeah, we are
groundwater
doing
system.
that this Thursday.
Sorry, Ashwak?
Yes, we will do that. That seismic study is scheduled this Thursday at the school site.
Right.
Yeah.
And what time is that? And who from DEC will be there?
I will be there for the wastewater program, and there are also two other persons from the drinking water.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it an all day thing?
We'll start at 8:30, and yeah, we are supposed to finish earlier than 5 because I think there is like an event at the school.
Oh, okay. And is this is just the school property, or is it going to go on School Street at 15 as well?
The school property, this is my understanding.
Not the town forest property.
No, only
Okay.
school property.
So that is this Thursday. Jeff Hoffer, who's our team hydrogeologist, will be there kind of leading that. He's not really leading the analysis, but he's kind of driving, this will be helping his work, I guess I'm trying to say. Next up after that, the survey is coming along well. I think we've covered a good chunk of both Route 15 and School Street. I need to get an update to see kind of what pieces we're still missing, but I think we're closing in on wrapping that up. That being the topographic survey that I'm of course referring to. Once we have that information, we're going to kind of quickly move into starting to lay out the plan sets and working through the design. We had been working on a VTrans 1111 permit for doing ledge probes in on Route 15, and we were trying really hard to secure some dates with our standard subcontractors who have geoprobe drill rigs, and we're kind of struggling to get them to commit to anything. And then all of a sudden, one of our contractors had an opening for next week for 3 days, and we were able to sort of rush through, thanks to VTrans, the approval of our 1111 permit, which we now have in hand. I think Linda was CC'd on that permit.
So Peter, just for clarity, this is for the septic system, not for the bridge.
Yes, correct. This is going to be running along our anticipated force main route to try to identify where we might have bedrock concerns. And it might inform us where we have either ledge removal or maybe where we want to shift the location of that force main. So we're roughly have points laid out. I don't know, I want to say every 50 to 100 feet all the way down the whole route of that force main. There will definitely be some sort of on-site field changes and judgments as we go and try to figure out where we want to be doing those. We will be laying those points out with stakes for dig safing probably Thursday, and we're working on getting a pre-construction, is what they call it, pre-construction meeting with VTrans either Thursday if she can get out of training they have in time to meet us, or if not, Friday, to just kind of go over what we're doing and make sure there's no concerns or conflicts. So that work will be happening next, I guess, the 23rd, 24th, 25th, Wednesday through Friday. We will likely, well, I guess now that we have the 1111, I'm not sure where we'll be starting. Originally I was thinking we'd start on School Street to give us a little more time to like fine tune the Route 15 corridor, but I think we'll probably play it by ear. We'll also be doing some borings up through the town forest, probably up the logging road. So quite a lot. They go pretty quickly because we don't need to go super deep, and we'll probably try to collect a little bit of geology data, but in general, we're just trying to figure out how deep we can get till we hit bedrock, or hopefully not hit bedrock. So that's next week.
So
Go
Peter,
ahead.
just curious, it sounds like the passive seismic and the geoprobes are two different ways of getting at depth to bedrock, but completely different ways to do that. Is that correct?
Correct. Two completely different ways of getting at it, and completely in sort of two different goals in this case. For the ledge probes, we're really just trying to figure out where we might have some conflicts with that force main. for the work, the seismic work up at the school, we're trying to really get a bigger picture of the overall geology and hydrogeology of the site. As far as landowner outreach, we have revised the previous letter that was sent out, and I apologize, I was hoping to get that out to you yesterday. And things have just been pretty crazy here the last couple of days, so it's ready to go. I just haven't sent it over for everyone's review, so I'll get that out probably first thing tomorrow. If everyone can kind of chime in if we think the messaging is right. It does start to talk about the mandatory connection and the opt-out language, and I kind of drafted it to say that the opt-out piece is still being worked on by the committee. So take a look at that when you see it tomorrow, and hopefully we can get that out later this week, early next week, so we can start to get closure on those kind of remaining properties. I will say we did have one property owner that had previously given us permission who had kind of rescinded that permission. I don't have the name that's on my tongue, but I thought that was kind of interesting.
Did they give a reason?
No, I don't believe so.
Could it have been the person that just replaced their septic at $30,000?
I don't believe so, but I'll have to question Alex a little bit more who it
I
is.
doubt it. I doubt it.
Just related to that last point, Peter, and then this is kind of a chicken and egg scenario, but we've been talking about mandatory hookups, and we have a draft ordinance that talks about this. We've been saying that publicly. The select board hasn't formally approved that, right, Linda and
No, they don't know
Alan?
anything about, no.
So how do we word that without the select board officially saying that? And it's like I said, it's a chicken and egg scenario that we have to get the septic ordinance draft of it to the select board. They have to approve it, and going through the ordinance approval process before it's officially mandatory. So how do we thread this needle with the letter that Peter's talking about, Linda, going out this week?
Well, that was not even one of my suggestions to include that. My suggestion was to include the fact that if they hooked up now, it would be free.
Yeah, we included that. I'm happy to take any language, the mandatory out if everyone thinks that's appropriate. Like it seemed to me to sort of make sense to start to lay the groundwork that, like, it's not going to be as simple as yes, I want to do this, or no, I don't. But I think it's fine to send out a letter that doesn't include that, and then see if we get more response, and then wait another month or two and see where we stand. So it's considering the chicken and egg scenario, that probably is appropriate.
What do you think, Linda? What
Yeah,
should
because,
we?
we haven't determined if it's an ordinance and what the enforcement's gonna be.
Yeah.
Oh, Bruce, this is Bruce. Can I make a comment or question, really?
Sure.
The town doesn't generally control sewerage. Should it be the state that actually controls this, or should they help with it? Or, what's our authority to control who hooks up versus the state's authority to grant septic system usage?
This is sort of up to the town to frame it. The state's a a conduit for helping this project and funding it, but it is up to the town to figure out how they want to develop the ordinance and or pay for the system that they will, well, in this case, have grant funding, but if there were a bond, it's sort of on the town to frame all that, so.
But it's certainly not our prerogative to determine whose system is adequate and whose isn't. That's the state.
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk more about that when we get into the ordinance, and that's this. The state is not going to, there's no one from the state that's going to mandate a connection. So some of the things we've talked about in the past is whether or not it meets the current standards and rules, and whether or not that can be documented or not, and whether or not the existing, there can be a system that is out of the 100-year floodplain or not.
And you have enough landowner permissions. I think you said we had 28 last time, Peter, and less one, so 27. You have enough to complete this, both the topo survey and the probes with those permissions and get towards our 30% design by end of year.
The probes will be entire, well, for the most part, the probes are, you know, entirely in the right of way, so we don't really have to ask for any permissions. And quite frankly, I guess everyone should be aware that this could be something people gripe about, because we generally are trying to do these probes outside of the pavement line, because B-Trans doesn't really want us poking around in their pavement. So, you know, we need that information regardless if the owners are connecting or not. In some cases, we might be wanting to go back and getting some probes where we think there might be an issue for tanks on individual properties, but that's not really what we're shooting to do next week. So for probes, we'll be all right. We can still get the 50-foot right away. There's certainly going to be some holes in terms of properties that we have by not getting everybody. But, you know, I think we'll get to a point where we have enough pieces of the puzzle that we can keep moving things forward.
Okay.
Would it be helpful if something was put on Front Porch Forum when you start, before you start, that's what's happening?
I think that would be helpful, Linda. Yeah, that would be great. Quite honestly, everything's coming together pretty quickly here, because we were originally shooting for like a mid-November date to be doing this. And then we got this window where we could get it done. But yes, I think that'd be great, just to let everyone know what's happening.
I would just need some bullet points to be able to write something up of, you know.
Yeah, we can get you
what you're
something.
doing, and I'll just put it together, you know.
That would be great. Yeah, we can get you some language to use. Aside from those updates, our team has met to try to start going through like the environmental interest document requirements and some of the environmental stuff. We're working on reaching out to an archaeologist and kind of at least getting on their radar that this project is going to be coming, and that we're going to need an analysis of that in, you know, early-ish 2025. So lots of little pieces that I won't bore you with, but we're trying to pull it all together.
Are we going to need any wetland permits or any other permits from DEC?
We will likely need some wetland permits. Yep. And that, as we start to fine tune where that force main's going, we can start to understand where we might have I don't think we're gonna have a whole lot of actual wetland impacts, but probably, you know, a fair amount of buffer impacts, in various locations. So yes.
And then through the forest too?
I think probably yes. And we've already had some of those conversations with the state wetland ecologist, but in essentially there are spots where we potentially could get out of the 50-foot buffer, but it would require much more significant clearing to create a swath outside of that existing logging road. So I think there was sort of an agreement with the state that it made sense to have some impacts, especially since they're temporary impacts. You know, essentially we're digging a trench, installing pipe and backfilling it. But there will likely be some permits needed for that.
So Peter, this is the first time I'm hearing this. So that the right of way through the town forest is essentially, there's an existing road there. So there's the cutting of the forest is going to be minimal. I didn't realize there was already a road that
Yeah,
the pipe can be put in.
there's a very conveniently placed, you know, probably 10 or 15 foot wide woods road that goes right up the path of what we need, and will also sort of be part of the grander vision of the trail network, I suppose. I don't know all the details of that. So the idea was that that was just going to run right up that that swath, and then there'll be minimal clearing on either side of that, since we're using that corridor that already exists.
Okay, well, that's good. Any other major permits that have to be sought besides the archaeology and potentially wetlands permits? And you said environmental interest permit.
Well, we're going to be preparing what's called an environmental interest document. We'll have to do sort of a NEPA-like review process. There'll be hearings for that. So that's all stuff that will be coming up in 2025, and that we're kind of working towards. I guess I don't have a comprehensive list of everything that's going to be in that right at the moment, but
It's
more-
very
more-
detailed.
yeah,
It's a
thank
very
you.
detailed, multi-page environmental information document that they'll submit as a draft. I will work on it. It's going to be a FONSI, which requires a 30-day comment period, public hearing. It's pretty intense. They also have a project review sheet that they'll fill out that'll kind of go through some of those permits that they're going to require for the project.
And would that be at some point next summer, that this permit and the hearing?
I would say it's going to need to be sooner than that.
Yeah, kind of shooting for spring.
It's got to be done and complete before we can issue like a final design letter. There's all these things that kind of also need to happen, like section 106. So once D30 comes in, that'll go to with an APE, area of potential effect, for the whole project. That'll go to Scott Dillon at HD at VDHP, and they'll get their concurrence in terms of, yes, you'll need phase 1 testing. No, you won't need this or that. It just depends, but that's part of the NEPA process, is section 106. So it's pretty long. There's a lot of federal acts that we need to meet as crosscutters. That is in that document.
So it's a lot of this work of filling out that document will happen over the winter then.
Yep. So Amy and Peter will work on filling that out. Get me a draft copy. We'll start concurring on certain things, looking at anything that might need a permit or mitigation. We're all in the world of let's avoid if we can, and if we can't avoid, let's mitigate what we can. Yeah, this is on every clean water SRF project we do. We go through these. It's the same form, no matter whether it's a CADX, FONSI, which is a finding of no significant impact, which is what this will be because we have a new indirect discharge to the groundwater.
What about the Act 250 amendment for the school property?
So then our NEPA process is looking at federal cross cutters, and the Act 250 is looking at the more of the state level. So that will probably need to be part of this process in the spring, slowly working towards getting that submission is what Peter and Amy will work on.
So is it just an amendment for the Schools Act 250, or does this our entire project need an Act 250?
My understanding was that there was a JO opinion about the whole project, if I'm not wrong, Peter.
I don't know if there is yet. That's one of the things we've been discussing internally that we need to do that. One of the things we need to do is verify the total land disturbance of the project. And if it's under 10 acres, then hopefully we can get a JO that says we don't need an Act 250 for the project. Part of that will be the consideration that we are doing work on the school property, which already has an Act 250.
Right.
So they sort of need to confirm that they're not sucking in the whole project because of that, and that maybe we're just doing an amendment to, document that we're doing the project there, and that there'll be a wastewater control building up there and some tanks, that sort of thing. So more to come on that. We don't really have the answers at this point, but it's on our radar and we're working on it.
So if we do, worst case scenario, if we do need it, is that going to delay our project?
No, I don't think this is going to be a big ordeal as far as Act 250 goes, but certainly it's something we'll want to get ahead of because it probably provides the public an opportunity to chime in along with sort of the FONSI hearings and other things. So we don't want to leave that right till the end if it does get dragged out at all.
Okay. And Peter, are we still on track to meeting the 30% design by the end of year or December?
I think so. Yeah, I would think that's still in the works. There's obviously a lot of pieces to that, and we're kind of still working on the field investigations, but that timeframe seems reasonable.
I was just thinking, Peter, if there's any way, if Linda's going to put something on Front Porch Forum talking about what you're doing next week, I think that's a good idea. It might be a good opportunity if we added a little bit more, but kind of like, what are the immediate next steps in the project? What are we working on now that the vote was approved from this fall until next spring and over the winter, and just talking about some of the survey design permitting that you just talked about. I don't know how much of that information we want to put out on Front Porch Forum to give people a heads up. This is what we're working on now, and if you see people out and about, this is what they're doing, because they're going to be different teams doing different things.
Quite honestly, I think these borings are going to be almost the last of what people haven't already seen.
Okay.
It may be appropriate, and the committee can talk about whether or not like a bigger picture update is when and if that is warranted. I would suggest right now let's just focus on those borings because that's going to be very visible. And also getting the letter out to those folks that haven't responded. With all of that happening, I feel like I don't know if we really have the capacity to give like a bigger picture summary in the next week or so. It's quite a lot of pieces right now already.
Well, okay, maybe not necessarily for next ahead of the borings, but I think as a committee, we haven't really spoken to the public since before the vote, and it's we're working on 2 months here where we haven't really put any word out to the public that I think we should be updating the public about what we're doing.
I
So
I
maybe
do think that's smart.
we
Yeah.
do that. Yeah, maybe that'll be a separate post, but something that we should put on our to-do list.
Yeah, I agree. Keeping folks informed would definitely be smart at this point.
But maybe Peter, a timeline, even just a timeline from you of just generally like uh, where we are now and what we're going to be doing over the next few months might be helpful towards that end. After we get through this probing.
Yeah, let me put a little thought into how much detail makes sense to be thrown out to the public like that. Maybe I'll chat with Amy a little bit too.
No, we don't, I don't think we need to put each individual permit that you're looking at, but just kind of
Big
generally,
picture
like
stuff that we're working on. Yeah.
we're seeking, we're working on permitting, working towards a 30% design. We're and then next summer we're really going to be we're focusing on the bridge and things like that.
Yep. Makes sense.
Anything else for Peter? Maybe just well, Emily, does that are we okay on your timeline? The grant
I
timeline?
I was actually just opening up the new ARPA grant. I have like a million of them right now on my thing here, so I was just trying to open up Wolcott to make sure. So if you give me just
Sure.
a few minutes, I'll
Okay, we'll
come back to me.
sure, we'll come back to that. Sure.
Thank you.
Anything else on that update that we missed, Tori, and on our agenda? Questions for Stone and Peter?
I guess I'll chime in one more thing, I guess, because it's been a month. We are working with V-Trans and McFarland Johnson on sort of the bridge related stuff so that they can get that out to bid. And Emily, I probably should circle back with you offline at some point and just kind of make sure we're on the same page with all of that.
On the bridge design with the sewer line.
Just some more of the nuances of this particular arrangement between V-Trans, the town, and DEC and WID, the Wastewater Investment Division, and how this is all going to kind of come together.
So far, this kind of final, no pressure, Peter, but we're gonna meet our deadline as far as on your end, as far as permitting, survey design.
Yeah,
As far as you
there's
can,
a ton of
we're on
work
track.
there. We are on track, yes.
Okay. Good. Any other questions for Peter? Folks have been
Thank
quiet
you.
tonight.
Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Peter.
You're welcome.
Yeah, based on the timelines and the new amendment for the ARPA grant, final design should be done by May 1st with the permanent, Amy and Peter have done a really good job coordinating with Ashwac around the project. So the permitting process will go much smoother once they get that submitted, hopefully by May 1st, and then bidding sometime there after the permit's issued. So it's kind of where we're at.
Sounds good. Tori, Linda, do you have any updates on the grant side of things, or Emily, for that matter?
I mean, the northern borders?
The grant update in general, and um, we at some point we'll, we've had previous discussions about surplus money and things like that, but I think
The ARPA grant amendment was signed, thank you, Linda, and was executed before September 30th. I don't know what the exact date is I don't have the signed one in front of me right now.
and that was the 1.4, Emily?
Or,
That was so it'll show the total amount of ARPA,
Okay,
which I believe is just over 4 million or 4 million, right?
okay,
I have it in front of me.
okay, so it's not just
that amount I
not
have
just
in
a
front of
new
me.
one.
Yeah. Yeah, that amount I have in front of me. It is 4 million. And we updated, I think Peter and I had talked before we updated some of the dates in there. So we pushed a couple dates out talking. The only one that really hasn't pushed out is the bid date by the end of August 2025. That's the only one that didn't get pushed out. Something to keep in mind with this CRRP grant. You guys got the CRRP grant, right? Linda?
Yes.
can you tell me what it really is?
The ACCD one, I forget what they call it, the
Yeah.
community recovery.
Yes,
We're probably should coordinate who's ever going to be doing the reimbursement packages for them and us should coordinate, because the CRP grant and maybe having Ellie Beckett here at some point would be beneficial. They will pay 20% of the reimbursement package. So for a while, we should probably be doing like an 80-20 split on that reimbursement packages with them and ARPA. When we get to spending the ARPA, we have some subsidy that we're working through as well. But when that stuff starts coming through, we need to recognize that they're not going to just pay 100% of a reimbursement package. That was something new that we learned in the last few weeks. So we just need to be mindful of that. So whoever's working on those packages, we can coordinate and walk through that to figure out how best to help town do that.
so that's the grant we received, $650,000.
Yes.
And there's a match to that?
Yeah, the match part, that 80% doesn't matter if it's federal, non-federal.
I didn't realize there was a match to it.
It's not a match, but they're only going to pay 20% of a reimbursement package. So that kind of impacts, when you submit the reimbursement for them, they're only going to pay 20% of that reimbursement. So we should coordinate that at some point to walk through that
So
together.
they're gonna reimburse 20%. Does that mean they're holding some of it back, the other 80%?
No, so what they'll do is, let's say you submit $100,000 invoice, like reimbursement package, and you're submitting it with, they'll pay 20% of it, and we'll pay 80%, and we do that until they finish spending all of the CRP grant. That is something new we've just learned. We have a couple projects with this, so whoever's going to be putting those packages together for reimbursement, we should just meet with Ellie and us and coordinate that so there's no hiccups.
Do you have anything to say, Tori? I can see something wanting to come out of your mouth.
I'm waiting for my moment.
Oh.
Also
I'm
taking
waiting for you
notes,
to
but-
speak.
Can I add an update about Northern Borders and like a question for Emily/Peter? Alinda and I worked to submit all of the initial award paperwork in their new grants management system, and I'm working on the new grantee trainings towards securing the final grant agreement. But thinking about the previous conversation about environmental reviews, I'm wondering when we might need to start looping in Northern Borders to that conversation.
Sooner than later. I don't have a specific on that, but from past experience, it would be good to be on the same page with them. I don't know if Emily has anything to add.
We haven't technically gotten the grant agreement yet. I think tomorrow is the press release, and they'll send out the letters, the award notices.
So yeah, Linda, I can follow up with the Northern Borders folks to see if they can start being a part of the conversation or if the grant agreement needs to be signed first. But we'll loop them in soon.
Yeah, I think, as long as we don't get too far out ahead of our environmental documents without knowing what they're gonna want is like the main concern. And we're not really quite there yet, but like the sooner we can start like understanding how the two things overlap would be helpful.
And LCPC and DEC folks also met recently to discuss crosscutters with the bridge project. And I followed up with Mark Spinelli to feel out a potential CDS award and what crosscutters might be involved with that kind of funding. And I just heard back from him this week, so I'm hoping to have some resolution about those federal crosscutters as well, and help schedule an upcoming meeting with DEC and VTrans folks to discuss all that.
Can you tell us what crosscutters are?
The federal laws and requirements that come with that kind of funding.
Okay.
Right? Simple terms, I guess, but Peter, it kind of sounds like maybe that could be one meeting with you too.
Yeah, that sounds great.
And can you sorry, can you remind us how much the Northern Borders grant was? Is it $1 million?
750,000.
750. And that one required a 20% non-federal match.
No, that is
50%.
50%. And is that what we're using the town ARPA money for, Linda?
Portion of it.
A portion of it. Yeah.
and yeah, and then the rest of the match for that would be the ACCD 640,000 grant we were discussing earlier.
Okay. All right. Anything else on the grant front? Grants front? You guys are doing a great job on keeping all these millions of dollars and different
Not really.
grants together. As far as I can see. Any other thoughts, questions on grants before we move on, folks? Anybody have any questions for Linda, Tori, or Emily? All right. I guess that brings us to our septic ordinance discussion and the select board's involvement in some of the septic ordinance decisions. And so I shared with everyone that so JB couldn't make it tonight, and we're gonna have to schedule a meeting outside of this time frame where we can have JB involved. But it would be good for us to queue up the questions that what we need JB to work on. And Tori sent the July minutes to myself and I think Linda earlier, and where JB went over a couple of different things on the ordinance and some lingering questions. And one question that we have to wrap our heads around, and again, this is another chicken and egg scenario that we talked about before, is how many people are going to hook up, which will determine the rates. And so we have the buyout folks that are obviously not going to hook up. We have the people that, and we also have the people that are going to potentially opt out. We kind of have to, it sounded like from JB, she needed those numbers before we determine what the fees and rates are. And then the select board, I guess what we're going to do is, my understanding is what we're going to do is present the select board rate options as part of the draft septic ordinance that we're going to send over to the select board for approval. Am I correct on that, Linda?
So the fees are gonna change every year based on the need, based on the contract for the person managing it, or based on the cost of pumping out the things. I'm not sure whether you actually put the fee in the ordinance. Do you? Do you write
I
the
don't know what
You
we
write
need to
the-
do.
ordinance, and giving the power to the water, wastewater
That-
commissioners to annually set the fee as needed, but you don't, but it is gonna change. You don't want a document that's set in stone and then have to have it approved every year, but you need to put language in there allowing whoever's going to set the fee.
That's
You know.
absolutely right, Linda. Yep. Because that's going to change every year. It's going to be the parameters of
So it's
how the
not-
organization is going to be run.
So the rates will not be part of the ordinance, which will change annually. That'll be separate.
So
So
we
that we're
won't
gonna say something in the
really
ordinance.
set the
Right, yeah.
rate. We won't set the rate. The sewer wastewater commission or the select board will set the rate every year at an annual meeting based on what they project their budget will be for the upcoming year. And it will always change. It could go down, it could go up. 5 houses could burn down and could be off the list, you never know.
So, okay, so it was my understanding, Tori, from the July minutes that you sent, that JB wanted that information to help set the rates, but so what Peter and Linda are saying, we don't need to do that.
I suppose not, but was definitely a detail she had asked for in that meeting. Perhaps it was miscaptured as to why.
Okay, and the other point that she brought up in that July meeting was how the sewer commission will be established, and she had a question, will the select board appoint sewer commissioners? Will the select board be sewer commission? And so we won't, it seems this again, how do we make this decision? Linda, is this something that this committee should make suggestions to the select board, or should we punt those decisions entirely? I mean, should we queue up some options for the select board as part of when we present the ordinance, or is the select board just going to make that decision separately? What does this committee need to do regarding recommendations on how the sewer commission is formed?
It
Maybe
depends
it-
on how attached this committee is in making that decision. Or you can just ask the select board to say, do you want to be the sewer commission that meets annually and sets the rates and deals with the problems? Do you want to appoint members to serve on this? Do you want the members to be elected at town meeting? I would
So
put it
maybe
before the board.
at the same time that the committee is presenting the draft ordinance, or before that?
I would say before, because you want to put it in the ordinance,
Okay,
wouldn't you? I don't know. Tori?
Well, back in August, JB had also sent
Yeah.
those draft Board of Sewer Commissioner bylaws.
Mhm.
I don't know if it would be helpful to review that outside the meeting, or I have them pulled up now if you want to look at what she had written.
so this would be how the sewer commission is formed, is what you're looking at, Tori?
Yep, the purpose and scope, composition of board terms, organization, officers. It's 12
Sorry.
pages.
Are we trying to check boxes to give back to Julie Beth, or like I personally I don't feel like this is super productive without her. But can we just schedule that meeting with her and do that then, or are we trying to give her some more information right now?
Well, she's also asking us what we want from the
Yeah.
septic, or from
Well, I
her
know
for the septic ordinance. I'm trying to wrap my head around where do we need JB's help on the septic ordinance? You know, it seems like we're pretty far along. It's not yet in legalese, is the term we were discussing before, but that JB would help on the legalese end. But where are the gaps in the septic ordinance that this committee, what does this committee need to do to our working draft of the septic ordinance before we send it to the select board? And where can JB help us, I guess, are my questions.
Fair enough.
And do we feel good about the working draft that we have now, that we can send that to the select board as is, with just some questions about select board, you need to make a decision on what you want to do as far as the sewer commission. If the select board wants to be the sewer commission, or you want to form a sewer commission, here's how you can do that. And what we just said about the rates being not part of the ordinance. And when does the sewer, in my mind, when does the sewer commission, when is it formed? When does the sewer commission formed on our timeline here? When do we need the sewer commission in place? And I think we had a past conversation about that. Is it after the hookups? Is it a year before, 6 months before? When does the sewer commission need to be in place?
I would guess it would need to be in place, probably 6 months before the final hookup, because they need to be working on a budget. They will know at that time who's hooking up. they will have to be reaching out to, some contractor to manage it. So
I
they
would
need
agree
to,
with
they
yourself.
need to meet, but not too right now.
So we're about roughly about a year from now, roughly.
Roughly a year from now, yeah. I mean, realistically, this thing isn't getting done till, you know, summer of 2026, so sometime early that year, probably.
Winter of
Maybe it's
26.
maybe it's a town meeting, timeframe sort of to appoint people. Or elect,
Mhm.
if that's the way you were to decide to go.
Yeah,
I think some of the groundwork will probably be laid by this committee and consultants for the framework.
Okay. We had one other question uh, regarding the ordinance that we needed to discuss, and then it's evading my mind at the moment. Oh, so tightening up the opt-out language. That seems to be something that we kind of left pretty loose, and that we need to tighten that up, because if Peter was going to send out a letter discussing it earlier and saying mandatory hookups, and maybe say there's an opt-out option, but people are going to want to know exactly what that opt-out option is. And we have pretty generic language right now that it seems like we should tighten up.
and
So I
should
guess we
this
could,
whole ordinance be reviewed by an attorney?
Yes, ultimately.
And do we know, do we know if, having a sewer ordinance, Emily might know, is in state statute where we can put civil penalties?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, Linda. I'd have to go do a little digging about
Oh,
that.
I can do it. I can look
Okay,
at Title
okay.
24.
you mean for people that don't hook up, or don't hook up, Linda, or people that don't pay, or what would the penalties be for?
Violations, any violation of the ordinance. And so each step is could be a different violation. Just like a dog ordinance, you could be violated for letting your dog run at large, you could be violated for not licensing, you know. It doesn't have to be the whole thing, it could be one section.
Okay,
But there's no sense of having an ordinance if you're not gonna enforce it.
right. Certainly, we're gonna need some sort of legal stick here.
And I'm sure it has to be in this, the legislature decides what ordinances a town can enact. I just want to go in there and look and be sure. I'm sure it is, but
Um,
There shouldn't
so
be a lot of, I'm sorry, I'll just chime in. There shouldn't be a lot of enforcement type issues. I mean, the town will be essentially running the system once it's built. So the question is, how will the town respond to folks who don't comply with the opt-out, in my mind? And
or that don't pay the fees.
well, there's
Yeah.
a whole different statute on fees.
right,
That's a whole different falls under Yeah, you don't have to worry.
So maybe we can just shelf this conversation and Tori, I know you're working on a grant agreement with JB. Um, maybe after that grant agreement is resolved, and JB can meet with us, can you and JB maybe do throw out some doodle poll dates for whoever may want to attend this separate meeting with JB? And who here would like to be participate in that meeting? Linda, Bruce, Forrest. Peter or Amy,
One of us
maybe,
will be there, yeah,
okay,
one or both.
and myself. Okay,
You,
do we got
you could,
everybody?
you could include me as optional, just depends on when you guys can meet with her.
Any idea, Tori, is that are we looking a couple weeks out before the grant agreement will be resolved, or I'm just trying to get a rough timeline here of when we might meet.
A couple weeks sounds reasonable. Are you trying to replace your committee meeting, or this will be separate meeting and hold your standing? committee?
Yeah, I mean, can we shift? Well, one thing actually that's a good point because in November our normal scheduled meeting would be the 19th, and I would likely not be able to make that date. So we might have to change if I am to attend, we might have to change it, or I would be absent. But JB can't make the Tuesday evening slot anyway. I don't know if we can shift that meeting to maybe Monday or something like that, the 18th, as a possibility. But if we do, we could, if we shift the night of the meeting just for 1 month, we could have JB at that meeting too, and just make that our meeting instead of having a separate meeting. What if should we have? I guess the question is, should we have it during a regularly scheduled committee meeting, which may or may not have to shift evenings, or do we want to have a separate like daytime meeting maybe with JB and in addition to our regular meeting?
I don't mind shifting it to the evening, so, everyone can attend, like Alan.
Does anybody have a conflict on the 18th, November 18th?
No?
No.
Okay, Forrest said that's good. Okay, can we tentatively, if JB is available, say that the 18th at 5? And that will be our committee meeting?
Yeah, I'll work to confirm that with her. And if that doesn't work for her, it'll just become a separate meeting with her outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And just the other, only other lingering agenda item. We had discussed updates to the select board. I'm feeling like maybe Peter, I know you're in a big crunch right now, but in a couple of weeks, is there a possibility? I'm just trying to get like a rough timeline of where we are in the project, and even just like a little one pager that we can present to the select board of where we are in the project. And
Yeah, that seems reasonable. Is there a meeting you're hoping to?
Linda, you meet
So
on
we
the
meet November 6th and November 20th.
um
I mean, if
So
there's
do,
nothing to present, don't feel like you have to.
okay.
I mean, if there's nothing really new,
Well,
then
actually, you know what I was thinking might be better than a November meeting. Peter, if you're thinking you'll have the 30% design, that might be something good to present to the select board? We'd have a little bit more in December.
I don't know that, let's talk about that at the next meet. Let me chat with Amy. I think we have to have a, presentation of that plan at some point. I don't, December just seems like it's a little crazy, but, I guess that could probably work. So it'd be like the 4th and the 18th would be your meetings in December, Linda?
yeah.
Well, we can just put a pin in it, Peter, and wait till our next meeting in November and see if
There
that's,
will be I will say there will be a bunch of public meetings coming up at some point, so I don't know that I'm at this point ready to commit to just adding some extra ones on.
can you tell me what public meeting you're talking about you're talking about for the design?
Yeah, I don't, let me circle back with you. I'll send you an email on exactly which ones we're gonna have. I mean, the Fonzie is in that hearing alone will go through the details of the actual design. So let me just, before we're saying, hey, we're gonna be at the select board on a certain date in December to present something, let me think about the big picture of when that's makes sense. I don't think it makes sense to just be throwing,
I
like-
just want to make sure the select board is updated before the public. Is that, Linda, is that fair? Does
Well,
the select board,
usually the select board kind of holds a public hearing or public meeting. And the
so we
public
could,
can come at the same time. It's not two different ones. I can just continually update them, that we're working on permitting and surveying and they'll be on Route 15. I mean, we're not ready for the ordinance, so I can just keep them informed so they know how it's moving forward. That's,
and, okay, that sounds good,
That's fine.
and then, so what I hear you saying is one of these required public meetings, Peter, and what you're saying, Linda, could be at a select board meeting?
well, it usually is, yes. It's not at
Okay.
it's not usually at a committee meeting. It's usually at a select board meeting.
It's not like a separate meeting like we were required to do for the wastewater
No,
vote. Okay. Okay. That's fair.
but
And
if we know, enough time, we'll publicize it and try to get people to come in to participate in it.
okay, and then Linda, maybe you and I can talk offline about so we'll do this front porch forum post, giving folks a heads up on the borings. That'll go out soon. And then maybe Linda, we can follow up with an email, just an update about what the committee's been up to since the vote and what we plan to do over the winter, just
Mhm.
kind of in general terms,
Mhm.
just to keep the public updated um, and we can even use that to update the select board with.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was sort of thinking as I'm listening to all this, Jim. I think your suggestion of trying to come up with a one pager update of all the stuff that's going on that could either be shared easily by Linda to the select board and or maybe pieces of that pulled out for some sort of a front porch forum post would certainly make sense.
Yeah, just some bullets or a literal timeline graphic. And maybe we could post it on the website.
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty detailed Gantt chart that we're working on updating. That's like way too much for
Yeah,
public to be trying to absorb, and probably too much for even this committee. But 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 yes, I think a bunch of bullets of like the big picture stuff would make sense.
in layman's terms, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. And I'm looking at the clock. We're at 6:19 and told folks it would be a lighter agenda and be out early, so I want to honor that. And so just on our immediate to do, recapping. So Linda was going to put out a post about the borings to give, especially folks in the village, a heads up that that's happening. This Thursday, you have the seismic evaluation at the school. If anybody wants to attend, I mean, I think anyone from the committee anyway. The school has the heads up, I'm assuming.
Correct. Yeah.
And then we have the borings Wednesday through Friday next week. And then Linda and I will meet offline to discuss a follow-up front porch forum posting of just kind of what, in general terms, what we've been up to and what we're planning on doing over the winter. And then we can work towards the more formal meetings when we get to the 30% design and some of your required meetings, Peter. And then so we're all in agreement on meeting on the 18th of November at 5 o'clock. So shifting that time. Bradley, would you mind changing for our next meeting date on our website? Would you mind changing that to that Monday, the 18th, instead of the Tuesday? Thank you,
You just
sir.
typed in sure. Yep.
Appreciate it.
So the one thing I will need to check is whether we can be at the town office that day.
Okay. Yep.
We might have to do another Zoom.
Okay.
Which is
And I'm just picking the 18th only because I have potentially something on 19th, 20th, 21 where I'm going to be out of town, depending on how the election goes. So that's why I can't do those days.
That's fine.
the
We could
18th is
shift.
good for me. I think Zoom with JB sort of doing a lot of the presenting might be best anyway.
Okay. There is potentially the option of the week before as well as a backup, like the week of the 11th or maybe the 12th or something if the 18th doesn't work.
I think that could work for me. One thing that wasn't on your list, Jim, that everyone should be looking out for is that revised letter to the remaining landowners.
Oh, right.
That should be coming out tomorrow.
So you're going to need a quick turnaround on that, Peter, right?
Yeah, the quicker the better. I don't think we need to rush it to a point where the committee doesn't feel comfortable with it, but particularly if you and Linda could take a look at it, that'd be great.
Sure. Anyone else want to take a look at that letter? Nope. That sounds good, folks. Anything else? Thank you for hosting, Tori.
Yeah.
Well, I'd say enjoy the rain, but it's pretty dreary out there. Well, thank you, folks. I guess we're
Yeah.
adjourned.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you guys. Have a
Thanks,
great night.
everybody.
Have a good one. All right.
Thank you. Bye.